really interesting to meet you today.
Yeah, I'm excited to meet you guys too. So just a little about me, everyone. I teach English writing classes in FEB and in the CRCS program at UGM. When I lived in America, I worked as a journalist, and I have experience editing and writing on a number of topics, as well as teaching those subjects. So I'm really happy to discuss academic writing and have a conversation with all of you about this, ideally.
Okay, we will start by introducing our workshop first, and then you can start your PowerPoint.
Okay, go ahead.
So, good afternoon, everyone. So, my name is Adinda Khalifa Putri. Here, I'll be your moderator until the end of the workshop. So, welcome to our workshop, Unsolicited Narrative Essay Writing Workshop. First, we would like to thank you so much to our media partner, first webseminar.id, webinaring.id, infoevent.indonesia, Seminarland, Jules Media, info_event Indo. So we would like to look at our rundown. Session 1 is structure of an academic essay, and Session 2 is the writing style for an academic essay and how to do it. Session 3, learning how to make your essay engaging yet writing academically. And there will be a Q&A session, and there will be a discussion too. So this is our guidelines. You need to really look at this. So number 1, please mute your mic when the speaker and the moderator is still talking. Number 2, participants may turn on their camera while listening to the session, but please remember, turn off your microphone. Number 3, please use proper words if you are given the chance to present yourself. Number 4, do not share your screen on the meeting. And when is the Q&A session? Number 1 is we will use Menti platform, which the participants can access through the www.menti.com, like I said before. Second one is the participant will be asked to put in a specific code, which will be told when it is time to do so. And the last one is to participate in the Q&A session through Menti. The participants have to put in their name properly and use proper words. Okay.
Lovely. So, Adinda, is there anything else to add regarding the introduction?
Actually, yes. I want to introduce more about you to everyone. So, this is our speaker. Let me introduce her. She is Sydney Allen. She is an Oberlin Shansi Fellow at University of Adinda, graduated as a Bachelor of Arts in English, Rhetoric and History minor from Oberlin College, Ohio, USA. She used to be an editor-in-chief in the Oberlin Review from May 2018 until May 2019. From February until May 2019, she was a reporter for the Chronicle Telegram. Up until recently, she is an Oberlin Fellow at Universitas Gajah Mada. She teaches English writing courses, academic writing courses, an introduction to journalism courses in Universitas Gajah Mada, English Literature Department, and its Center for Religious and Cross-Cultural Studies. She is also edits University Press and act as a freelance editor for Universitas Gajah Mada faculty and PhD candidates. So, Sydney's, maybe we're ready to start the workshop? Yes, okay. Without any further, let's get started.
Lovely, thank you guys. So Adinda, do I have the permit? Did you give me the permission to share my screen?
Absolutely, yes, of course.
Okay.
So maybe we can stop sharing our PowerPoint.
Okay. So I appreciate everyone, being willing to try out these technological mediums as we try and navigate this interesting new reality. Turn on. Okay. Sorry, I'm sharing my screen now. Present. Can you guys see my screen? Is it working?
Yes.
Adinda, yes, perfect.
Yes,
okay,
perfect.
Present. I apologize. I typically don't use Google Meeting, so I'm not as adept at it. So the first session will be on organizing an academic essay and how to actually write an academic paper. So academic papers are pretty much composed of just 3 different types of sections. You have the introduction at the start of the paper, body paragraphs, which make up most of the content, and a conclusion at the end. So a quick overview of how an academic paper should be structured. You start with your introduction, which tends to begin with more general, broad information, and then you narrow to your thesis statement, which will list the main ideas and most important part of the essay. So that thesis statement is your main argument, your main purpose of the paper. And so the 3 body paragraphs are composed of the supporting ideas. That's where you are primarily arguing within the paper. Also, can everyone mute themselves? I'm sorry, it's echoing a little bit. So make sure you're muted.
Okay, everyone, please turn off your microphone while the speaker talking. I see Nuraini is still turned on your microphone. Please help us to turn off it. So it will be great.
Thank you, Adinda.
Yes.
So yes, then you have your body paragraphs, which each begin with a topic sentence, and we will be discussing more about that later. And then, of course, it ends with a conclusion, which essentially summarizes your main points. Okay. So when writing an introduction, you should focus on 2 main aspects. First, you need to have a hook, an attention getter that draws your reader in and gives them a reason for reading, essentially. And so these attention getters can range from a question, an interesting fact, a statistic, anything that draws the reader's attention and makes them want to read your paper. That is the attention getter at the start of an introduction. And then I know you all discussed thesis statements yesterday, so I won't go too into detail about that. But just to reiterate, it should convey the main point of your essay and essentially tell the reader what your plan is. So the thesis statement is kind of the most important part of the essay. It is, your entire topic boiled down to a single sentence. And as I mentioned, usually introductions start broadly and then end more specifically with exactly what you're talking about. Okay, so here is an example of an introduction. I'll read it for you all. Jakarta is full of charm and scenic beauty, so visitors from around the world come to enjoy its famous theaters, museums, delicious food, and scenic wonders. Although Jakarta seems like a paradise, it isn't. The city has several serious problems: poor public transportation, congested streets, and expensive housing. So in this example, you'll notice I divided the introduction into two sections. I highlighted the attention getter, and this is what would draw someone into this article. It's what would, essentially tell the reader what this is about. And then more specifically, in the thesis statement, I present the problems and the specific topics I will be addressing within this essay. Okay, so next, we are moving on to the body paragraphs. So typically, the most basic essay structure is the 5-paragraph essay. And that means an essay would have 1 introduction, 3 body paragraphs, and it would end in a conclusion. And each of these body paragraphs is discussing a different idea or kind of main argument for your essay. So for instance, if I am writing this paper about Jakarta, my first body paragraph might be about how Jakarta is expensive. My second one might so should have own distinct argument and idea. Instead of a topic sentence, which is more essentially laying out what you will be discussing in that paragraph. And then it should have some sentences, evidence to support paragraph argument. And finally, we'll have conclusion.
I'm sorry, Sydney. We couldn't really hear you.
So, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, is you hear me? You okay, let me switch to my phone in this case. Give me a moment, everyone.
Okay, Sydney, we will wait. Take your time, Sydney. Okay, so everyone, please be patient and let Sydney fix this. It's okay. Okay, everyone, I'm sorry for Sydney's connection. Now she is trying to switch the device. Okay.
Hello, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. I don't quite know what the problem is.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, I will continue presenting.
All right.
Thank you all for your patience. Okay, so now, as I was saying, going into the body paragraph, I'll read this paragraph. The first and most important problem is Jakarta's inadequate transportation system. So you'll notice that this sentence essentially conveys your whole argument for this paragraph. It is saying that the biggest problem in Jakarta is the public transportation. And then we go into the supporting sentences. Thousands of residents rely on the city's buses to travel throughout the city. But metro transportation systems' daily schedules are totally unreliable. A bus or streetcar should arrive at 7:45, may not arrive until 8 or later. Moreover, it is not unusual for a bus driver to pass up large groups of people waiting for the bus because he wants to make up for lost time. Unfortunately, people often end up going to work late or missing important appointments. So these supporting sentences help convey why public transportation is inadequate in Jakarta. These sentences are just proving the argument that you made in your topic sentence. And so in conclusion, in order for people to get to their destinations on time, people must allow for waiting time at bus stops. So it just reconveys what was said in the rest of the paragraph. Okay, so finally, every essay ends with a conclusion. So it is the last text of the essay, and it's essentially summarizing or repeating the most important ideas. It should typically explain why your topic matters and relate it to the larger context. And so by that, I mean that conclusions are supposed to tell the reader why you chose this topic, essentially. So if I am writing about transportation in Jakarta, I might conclude by explaining why it is a big deal that people can't reach their destinations on time. So why does that matter? How is it actually affecting that city? And what are the larger implications of that problem? So in conclusion, Jakarta must improve its public transit system to clear up massive traffic jams caused by slow-moving traffic in the downtown areas and keep rentals down to affordable levels. In other words, Jakarta must improve its image, or it will soon become just another mediocre city due to the lack of administrative responsibility to solve these unfortunate problems. So this second sentence is conveying why this matters to Jakarta. So if Jakarta wants to be a recognized metropolitan capital, it needs to solve these problems or it will be considered mediocre. And this is just another infographic that I thought might be helpful when planning your academic essays and deciding how to format these texts. So I would recommend when you are planning your academic essays to use an outline kind of like this, where you write exactly what your hook is, and you plan ahead, you write your thesis statement independently, and then you list out your main your main argument points and supporting details. So let me see. Adinda, would you prefer I ask questions or I answer questions after every section or after the entire presentation?
If you want to after every section, it would be great.
Lovely. Okay. So does anyone have any questions about that aspect of academic writing so far? You can either type them or say them out loud, up to you.
Okay, so anyone that confusing about some points, you can maybe just put it down your question in comment section now. Or if you want to turn off your microphone, please one by one, asking one by one. Anyone? About the PowerPoint, about the, maybe you have some words like example for the introduction and you want to ask. It's okay, everyone able to ask. You can type it.
Yeah. And if not, I can just continue and we can answer questions at the very end. I just wanted to make sure that this was clear for people.
Okay.
So is it okay to start an essay with an anecdote? So it depends on the context. It is definitely an option for a way to start an essay, but you need to be smart and discerning about, what is the topic? Is an anecdote the best possible way to start that essay? Because it is acceptable, but certain contexts would do better in certain contexts than in some others. So it depends on what you're writing about, what class it is for, who is your audience, do you have a personal story that fits very well in that subject? So that's, yes, good question, Marcia. Anyone else?
So there is, yeah.
Yeah, so how to keep my intro brief. So that is a great question, because I do see a lot of students making long introductions with too much detail, and it's, as a reader, it can be hard to follow that, and it's can sometimes seem disorganized. So I recommend making an outline before you start of exactly what hook you're going to use, and then write exactly what your thesis statement is. And then you should have maybe one or two other sentences just connecting those and kind of transitioning between them. So between 2 to 5 sentences is a good standard for introductions. So if you tend to be a little wordy, just force yourself to stick to that standard. And what are some tips to make our hooks strong? Yeah, that's a great question. I would recommend trying to find what makes your topic interesting and relevant to the reader. So try to avoid overly general statements, such as, if you're writing about religion in Indonesia, I've seen some people start essays with, there are many religions in Indonesia. And that's not a very good hook, because it's not specific, it's too general. Instead, you might want to choose an interesting fact about religion. You might choose something a bit more specific to your topic. Always try and go for specificity rather than generality. And I will talk about that much more. So particularly how to keep your writing brief in lengthier writings. I would suggest always making an outline before you create an academic paper. So instead of just jumping on your laptop and clicking away, make sure you know what you want to write beforehand. So make an outline of your main points and how you plan to organize your paper. Okay, so great questions, you guys. Feel free to keep them coming. I'm going to move on to the next section.
Okay, thank you so much for everyone who already asked. Like Sydney said, we can use anecdote for the introduction, but not all the essay were able to use it. There's no rules about that. And Sydney already shared about how to make your writing is more brief. And thank you so much, Sydney. You can continue.
Thank you, Adinda. And those were really great questions. So please keep them coming, you guys. Okay, so now we are moving on to academic writing style. So how to actually write in an academic fashion and stay professional in your writing. Where's mine? Okay. So one of the most crucial elements of academic writing is your word choice. As I mentioned, I will be saying this a lot. Always aim for specificity in academic. Oh, come back. Always aim for specificity in academic writing. There's nothing wrong with using limited language within your papers, as long as you are being clear and conveying your meaning to the reader. should be your main goal when writing academic papers: clarity and getting your meaning across. So anytime you are writing an academic paper, I recommend thinking through how to convey your ideas as specifically as possible. So for instance, here are some examples of non-specific language: things, stuff, it, that, a lot, etc. So anytime you find those kind of words in your writing, see if you can be more specific and replace them with the actual thing that you are talking about. And I want to make a note that I put it and that in this list. While it's okay to have those words in your paper, you'll notice that sometimes if you use them too often, it becomes very unclear what you're talking about. It's hard for the reader to follow your train of thought when there's too many non-specific references, such as it or that. And also avoid slang or colloquialisms. So colloquialisms is just another word for slang, and it means casual words that you would use either when speaking or with friends. So colloquialisms are everyday expressions. Some examples of slang, I struggled to come up with this: hang out, chill, lit. All of these are examples of slang, and you never want to include that kind of language in your academic essays. And some examples of colloquialisms, so everyday expressions, might be at the end of the day, every once in a while. What are some others? Most idioms, most expressions, you want to avoid those within your academic papers. Instead, try to be more clear and direct about exactly what you are talking about. And so I believe you all will be getting a link to this PowerPoint, and I attached a URL here for the Manchester Academic Phrase Bank. And this is a really helpful tool that provides a word bank of academic language for different scenarios. So for instance, it provides words you can use when comparing and contrasting, words you can use when making an argument, words that are helpful for disagreeing. Many different topics and categories, and a lot of really beautiful, useful academic language in that resource. So please check that out in your free time, and explore this for when you do have to write academic papers, so that you can be prepared and maybe increase your vocabulary a little bit. Okay, so next. Oh no. So next, try to avoid using personal pronouns within your academic writing. So academic writing is typically meant to persuade someone or prove you know a certain amount about a topic. It's meant to kind of explore an opinion or idea and contribute to the academic sphere and literature that already exist. So the reason we don't include I or me in academic papers is that they don't necessarily contribute or matter in most contexts. your perspective isn't really relevant to a lot of when making an academic argument. So I've included a common example of a situation where I frequently see personal pronouns. So in many people's thesis statements, they will write, in this paper, I will discuss, or in this paper, I will be talking about this or arguing for this. So instead, this paper discusses, or this paper will examine. So avoid using personal pronouns within academic writing. Okay. So another way to improve clarity and the quality of your writing is to be more specific. And so I've included a couple ways that help increase specificity and clarity and will assist you as you navigate this writing process. So the first one is avoid contractions. So isn't, shouldn't, don't, and instead spell out the entire word. I know it might seem like a small issue, but in academic writing, the standard is that you spell out all of these contractions and all of these, communication strategies because you want to be as clear as possible. So in addition to spelling out contractions, you also should, on the first mention, when you first describe something, you will spell out the whole name of an organization. You will be overly informative about what exactly you're talking about. So, for instance, instead of saying UGM when writing a paper, the first time you mention it, you will write out Universitas IMAJI. So you try to very clearly make sure there are no miscommunications in your paper. So that's why you overshare almost. You are trying to preemptively give the reader all of the information they might need. So another way to increase clarity and specificity within your writing is avoid the passive voice. So passive, I know, is very common in Indonesia, in Bahasa Indonesia, but in academic English writing, passive voice is kind of frowned upon because it is seen as a less clear form of communication. So for instance, the houses in Jogja were built by a number of carpenters and electricians. So in this sentence, the subject is the houses instead of the actual people doing the work. And so it should always be the people in the, real, the subject should always come first. So I changed it to active voice by saying many carpenters and electricians work to build the houses in Jogja. So many carpenters and electricians build the houses in Jogja. So I've changed this so that the carpenters and electricians, the subject of that sentence, come first, because it very clearly shows who is doing that labor and what exactly are they doing. Okay. So does anyone have any questions about academic writing style? How do I tell if my paper is good or bad? Okay, that's an interesting question. So I would, first of all, change your mindset around good or bad. Because every paper, no matter what, is a work in progress. Every paper has room for improvement, and every paper could get better. So instead of saying this is a bad paper, say this could be improved. And anyway, so how to tell if your paper could be improved? I would, so the way I would recommend, judging that is how clear is your paper. When you go through paragraph by paragraph, is it very, very clear what your argument is, what the supporting details are that you're using to prove that argument, and is it well organized? So that is why I recommend always making an outline, as I've mentioned, because that will help you in organizing your paper and will make it clearer and more communicative for the reader. Okay, good question. Do we have any others?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, so in my previous slide about the conclusion, I suggested leaving readers with questions and vivid images. Sure, so let me see if I can go back to that slide. Okay. I don't know if it's sharing. Okay, so I don't know, leaving readers with questions and vivid images. I don't know if it was the conclusion that talked about this. So conclusions should primarily sum up your paper. They should reiterate what you argued for the rest of the paper. So the first part is always, the summary, and then the second part is conveying why it matters and relating it to the larger context. So I like to, whenever I am writing a conclusion, I always make a list of what the larger connotations of that argument would be. So I like to list out, why people might read this. I like to think, okay, if I'm submitting this to a journal, for instance, I think, why will people want to read this? What about this is relevant? And from there, that is how you decide how to end your paper, because you will come up with the reasons why, why it matters and why people should read your paper. And that's what you want to end with. You want to end with the kind of larger ideas that give you a clear picture of, how your work fits within the larger academic sphere or the larger cultural context. Okay, so next question. If we are supposed to explain things clearly, how do we keep our opening from being too long? Especially when the paper is about something obscure/technical that the paper's audience might not know of or understand. Yeah, really good question. I appreciate you asking this. So the conciseness, does everyone know the word concise? It means being able to communicate something in a very brief, clear way. It's one of my favorite words. So conciseness is a skill. It's something you can work on and practice, and actively improve. And so I would recommend whenever you write an academic paper, you need to read it again. You need to go through and edit for the unnecessary information. And in terms of how to keep the opening or introduction short enough, I would recommend just being very diligent about how you plan and structure. So you have to be strict with yourself that I can only make this, 2 to 5 sentences. You have to give yourself that limit. Okay. So next question. Someone is asking, I want to ask how to keep the focus or scope of an academic essay. I like to plan what kind of topic I'm going to write, but I can't focus. Okay, so that again is almost entirely about planning. So if you're someone who likes to wander a little bit with your ideas or who gets a little bit distracted, you have to plan in advance. You cannot, if you're one of those people, you cannot just come to your computer and start click-clacking. You can't just start typing, because that is when your paper will start wandering around. You have to know what you want to say before you start. And so it's all in the planning process. It's all about how you, think about your paper beforehand. You have to brainstorm an idea that you're really interested in and make sure it's specific enough that you don't have to over-explain, because your goal should be thoroughly covering a topic in a clear way. And so if your topic's too big, you'll see that you won't be able to thoroughly explain everything that needs to be discussed. So that's when you have to narrow it and keep your scope a little bit limited. And let me see. We have one more. Do you have any book recommendations or other references about this topic? Let me see. I can check in my drive and I will pass that along to the moderators at some point. Let me see. Not off the top of my head, but I will keep looking for you. So thank you for the question. Any other questions before I move on to the second part?
So, everyone already asked all the questions? Or still, there is one still wanting to ask? Okay, if there's not, like Sydney say, if you are talking about good or bad, there is no a good or bad paper. Do not underestimate your own paper, because it will be bad if you are thinking your paper is bad. So the thing that you need to think is you need to improve. And like someone asked how to end the essay, maybe you can tell the readers like, okay, you need to read it more, or you can do something, a word like that, so you can end the essay. And also, this is the important things, you need to do a little note that maybe your topic is not really run away to anywhere else. And yeah, thank you so much for everyone who already asked question, and thank you so much, Sydney.
Yeah,
we can continue.
Great. And I also want to add that if possible, try to have someone else read your paper before you turn it in, particularly if it's an important paper that you really care about and want, you want to do well. Get a friend where you exchange papers before you submit it to your professors. Peer feedback is one of the biggest resources you have at university. So when you exchange papers, your main goal should be to let your friend know if their paper is clear. And you have to be honest. You have to tell them, your introduction is good, but I have no idea what your main point is in your second body paragraph. You have to be very honest with that person. You can't, the expression we have in English, it's called sugarcoating. So when you have something sour, you might cover it in sugar so it tastes better. But you can't do that with writing. You have to tell someone very clearly and straight what, if something is unclear. And anything I write, I have some friends in the United States who I still send everything to them. And they will send me back a document with tons of notes and feedback, no matter what it is, and suggestions for changes. And I do the same for them. So it's really great if you can foster those kind of symbiotic friendships and relationships, particularly with writing and, academia. Okay. So
thank you so much, Shipney, for the tips, because it really worked for me when you told me in the class.
Good. Yeah, I hope so. I think peer feedback is so useful and necessary. And also, it's a good practice of how to respectfully, but honestly and clearly tell someone your opinion and critique a little bit, which is a hard thing to do. So you have to work on those skills.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Sydney.
Of course. Okay, I will go back to the presentation.
All right.
Oh no, that's not what I want. Sorry, I almost left the call. Okay. Okay, so this is the fun part. How to make an academic paper interesting. So when our lovely moderators and everyone who arranged this workshop, when they mentioned that this was the topic, I laughed a little bit because I think academic papers are always interesting. I think they can be exciting and an opportunity to learn and to broaden your perspective. And so I think they're interesting, but some people might disagree. And so here I'm going to cover a few ways that you can make your academic paper more appealing to a larger audience. So I'm referring to this section as engaging writing. So how to make your writing engaging and, interesting for an audience. So how to get their attention and maintain it. And the first element for making your writing more attractive and engaging is word choice. So avoid repetitive language in academic papers. If you want your writing to be interesting and fresh to your reader, you need to diversify your language. And that means, using synonyms, pushing your boundaries around word usage, and using words that are interesting and vibrant and descriptive. So using descriptive language is a great way to make your paper more interesting. And I'll show you an example in one moment. Also, I think I've said this in every section, but use specific language. Avoid vague generalities and avoid sentences that don't actually say anything. And I know that sounds funny and kind of counterintuitive, but sometimes a sentence isn't really communicating as much as it could be. So here's an example. Oh, my computer's about to die. So the archipelago of Indonesia is filled with a diverse array of creatures, including spectacular orangutans, Komodo dragons, and a variety of tropical birds. These fascinating species are some of the many factors that draw tourists and visitors to Indonesia. So that is an example of a more engaging, interesting paragraph. And here is a less engaging one. There are a lot of animals in Indonesia. Some examples of these animals are orangutans, Komodo dragons, and birds. Oh no, I made a typo. Because of these animals, many tourists visit Indonesia. So this sentence, they're conveying the same thing. They're saying the same main point, but this one is doing so in a much more interesting way. And the way we do that is by diversifying our word choice. You'll notice in the second one, there's some word repetition, and here there is not. We use different words to discuss the same things. For instance, creatures and species versus animals and animals. Also, the first example is filled with adjectives and adverbs. So instead of saying creatures, we say a diverse array of creatures. We're giving a little bit more description. We're being more specific. Spectacular orangutans. So a little bit more description. Fascinating. Many factors. So all of these are, not entirely necessary words, but words that add a little bit of vibrancy to this paragraph. And perhaps it might be over the top. Some of you might read this and decide, I hate it. It's not clear enough. It's too, flowery in its language. But this is one example of how to make your writing a little bit more engaging. So the second is about incorporating examples. Give me one moment, everyone. I'm going to plug in my laptop.
Okay, so everyone, please wait for a minute.
Okay, sorry about that. So incorporating examples. This is primarily relevant in your body paragraphs because those will be composed of supporting details and examples that help prove your argument, your thesis statement. And when deciding what to include and how to prove your thesis statement, you have to pick the most interesting and relevant examples possible. So choose carefully and selectively. And this means, if you're writing about pollution in Jakarta, you will want to incorporate some actual examples of what that means. And that could be statistics or, anecdotes from people who live there. You could include information about the dumps in Jakarta. And when discussing examples, it is important to don't be dramatic, but do feel free to kind of acknowledge when something is a big deal or shocking. So for instance, if you are discussing pollution in Jakarta, you might want to talk about the amount of plastic that is used every day. And, you can, so you can choose an example that maybe just lists a statistic, or you could include an example that conveys the real world impacts of that. So you want to choose something that will kind of draw feeling out of your reader, that really makes them think. So an example. So if you remember, this is the paragraph we examined in the first section when discussing transportation issues in Jakarta. So thousands of residents rely on the city's buses to travel throughout the city. But metro transportation systems' daily schedules are totally unreliable. A bus or streetcar that should arrive at 8:15 might not arrive until 8 or later. So this is one example. And this is a concrete, clear example of what the problem is. So I chose this one because it is clearly demonstrating and proving why this is relevant, what the problem is, what is happening here. It's proving that assertion. Moreover, it is not unusual for a bus driver to pass up groups of people waiting for the bus because he wants to make up for lost time. So in both of these examples, we are choosing clear evidence to support the assertion that we're making in that paragraph. We're choosing specific examples and incorporating them into that text. And it's more important to have, fewer really strong examples than to have many less strong, not as interesting examples. So try and go for the most powerful, high impact examples you can find. And that means examples that clearly communicate exactly what the problem is and prove your opinion and your thesis statement. They support your argument. Okay, so this is my favorite section. So the most important and probably crucial aspect of making a paper interesting is making sure it's a paper you care about. So when possible, try to connect assignments to your actual interests, to your passions. Readers can sense writers' interest levels. It's very clear when someone is writing about something that they find meaningful and important versus when someone is writing about something they don't actually care about. And try and work with your professors to incorporate those elements. So I always use the example that when I was in undergrad, my university did not have a journalism program, but I wanted to be a journalist. I had figured that out. I knew that. And so when I was an undergrad, for most of my English classes, for most of my, all of my classes actually, I would find a way to tie whatever subject or topic we were talking about to journalism or the media. So for instance, in a history class, I wrote about history of media or something. If you're someone who is interested in gender relations and feminism or activism, you can try and incorporate that perspective when analyzing a piece of writing. So always try to tie your interests into a subject. And I promise that most of the time, your professors will work with you to make that happen and to let you work within your interests. Don't stay entirely limited by what you think they want. Because as long as you are practicing, as long as you are meeting the goal of the assignment and you are practicing your communication and writing skills, the topic is probably the least relevant thing. So always be brave and work with your professors and talk to them to see if you can tailor an assignment to your interests. Don't just do it without telling them and turn in a paper on something totally different, but see if, get their approval, see what they think, see if there is a way to tie in your interest. Yeah. So this one is kind of the most simple tool for making engaging writing, but I think it is by far the most important and most effective. Okay, so does anyone have any questions about either that section or the presentation as a whole?
Okay, so everyone, you can just easily comment or ask a question, or you want to discuss about something for the entire PowerPoint or the last session, you can just easily comment to the comment section. Like I said before, we use menti.com. You don't need to go to the menti.com, just easily open your mic if you want to, or you want to type it down, it's okay. We will wait for your question. So anyone is able to ask any question. Okay.
Oh, so thank you very much for whoever just. I'm glad that you enjoyed the presentation, and I hope it's useful to everyone. And I believe this PowerPoint will be provided to everyone who attended.
Yes.
So I saw a couple typos that somehow I missed when writing, so I will try to fix those. And if anyone thinks there is something I should add to that PowerPoint that would be helpful to you, please let me know, and I will be happy to, make it more useful for you all, because that's the goal of this. So,
yeah, I see a lot of people want you to be their lecturer.
Yeah, you all are very kind. Oh, I mean, that's one of the, benefits of online learning is that there are a lot more opportunities to see videos or lectures or discussions that maybe you wouldn't have before because of the increased technology. So, yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of people are really interested in PowerPoint and how you explain about the academic writing, like you said before. Everyone was like, "Oh, what is academic paper?" And when you explain it now, it's like not boring at all. Everyone is really enjoying. Like a lot of people. Oh my god, yeah, a lot of people really love you.
You all are very sweet. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit that I hope when it is time for all of you to write academic papers, I really encourage you to use some of those templates that I provided, the different graphs and infographics to map out your ideas. I know I've already said this, but I still make outlines using that kind of model before I start writing journal articles or, journalistic articles as well. Yeah, I think the planning process can sometimes be the most intimidating part before writing. And it's something that you're going to have to force yourself to do, because I know a lot of my students will say, oh, I had all these ideas for what I wanted to write about, but then I waited until the night before the paper was due, and I just had to type as fast as I could. And I don't know how many people identify with that, but I know I've done that before. So maybe some of you do also. So I always find it helpful to try and do the planning as soon as I get an assignment, to do that part early, and then it makes it easier for the actual writing process.
Yes, Sydney, there is one question there. How to use adjective properly and not make the noun description too long?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because it's a fine line between having a paper that's, extremely dry and uninteresting, and having a paper that you can't even take seriously because the person is using way too many adjectives. And the word we use in English is flowery. So like a flower, where something is very pretty and kind of lighthearted and, not serious. So you don't want that in academic papers. But just being, it's all about discipline. So forcing yourself to read through a paper, and if you realize, okay, I have this, I have a 10-word sentence, and 3 of the words are adjectives. That's probably too many. So be selective about when you use adjectives and descriptive language, because not everything needs an adjective. If you notice in the example I made, we described orangutans as spectacular or something, but then Komodo dragons did not get an adjective. And so it's just making those choices and making sure to not overwhelm the paper. I hope that answered your question. And now we're moving on. You said that we have to make sure it's a topic we care about. What is a topic that you're personally passionate about? Oh, thank you for asking that. I think, well, I'm from the United States. I don't know if I made that clear. I'm from the United States, and I'm very political. I care a lot about politics and activism, and so I think anything in those categories I tend to get very excited about. But also, I tend to be a very excited person, and I love academia and academic writing. So I'm very easy to please when it comes to writing and papers, because the whole concept just excites me. And I hope all of you, will start to feel the same way, that academic books and journals and academic discussions can be so enriching and exciting. It's all about, who you're engaging with and finding areas that fit within your interests. Okay, so next question. If I want to make a paper that relates to many different subjects, what should I do to keep the whole paper straight and to the point without favoring one topic or one subject over the other? Well, honestly, Dila, I would say if your paper is covering many different subjects, it's probably too broad. It should be narrow enough that you can focus pretty much on one specific topic or subject. Because exactly what you said, if you are covering many different things, then one perspective often gets, too much attention and the other doesn't get enough attention, or it becomes unclear to the reader. So try, when you're in that situation, to limit your scope. But if for some reason you just happen to, have to discuss numerous things in a paper, I would say that's something you can address in the planning process. So when you're making an outline, for instance, I'm gonna write an outline example in the text. And when you're making an outline, you might say, for a body paragraph, for instance, if I'm writing about, what am I gonna write about? We're gonna write a paper about why you shouldn't use plastic bags. So I would recommend, making that body paragraph about. So our body paragraph is about why recycling is bad why plastic bags are bad for the ocean. So you would say, okay, it could kill sea animals, it makes the beaches dirty, it's bad for fishermen who then get tons of trash in their fishing nets. So list out your main reasons and supporting details. And if you notice, this point only has one, really good, relevant reason behind it, where this one has 5. So that will be a good indicator that maybe your paper is unbalanced. So it's all in the planning process. I hope that helped. Do you have some publications of your own that we can read? Sure, yeah, I can send along some. I think some of them you need a VPN because they're in the United States and it's a different system. But yeah, I can definitely share some information. In recent years, I've been editing academic journal articles. I've been doing that more than writing. And so I've gotten a lot of interesting perspectives on, students' academic writing, usually master's students, or even professors who are creating academic writing. And I think even though, what they're doing, publishing 20, 30-page journal articles, and what you guys are doing, a 5-paragraph essay, or, a 10-page paper, or whatever you end up writing, even though they're very different, these same principles that I listed still apply. And to no matter what the context, these are principles that are really helpful in academic writing. No matter what, every paragraph should have a topic sentence where you clearly lay out what the paragraph is about. And then you're going to support it. It gets more complex the more you go into academia, but these principles are the same even at those complex levels. It's just a little bit more long, honestly.
Okay, so there's another question. If not, maybe I will ask some question too. So maybe I want to ask about, maybe a lot of people want to write some paper, but it is their first paper. So maybe they're confusing about what should I talk, what should I write, or something like that. So maybe you can add any suggestion that you could add, like from where we can do some paper, or maybe we can, I don't know, reviewing a book or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do get that question quite a lot of people who don't know what to write about. They are struggling to make a choice, or to decide what a good paper topic would be, what an interesting paper topic would be. And so a lot of that is also about knowing yourself and knowing what you are interested in. So for instance, if you are someone who really likes novels, you love reading, you love, exploring different worlds through text, then that's easy. You can find a really interesting, relevant book that you're passionate about and write about that. But if you're someone, maybe you like, maybe you like sports, or maybe you like football or something. There are always ways that you can make those interests into academic topics. When I taught in the U.S., I remember one of my students who was an American football player, very different, so it's like this one, who was an American football player. He wrote a really beautiful paper about communication in sports and in racism that comes with sports sometimes. So he took a subject that isn't necessarily academic, it's athletic. He liked football, he liked basketball, and he found a way to turn that into something academic. So it's all about discovering your own interests and seeing if you can relate them to whatever you're studying. So I had a student last year who loved drawing in CRCS. She was a really beautiful artist and was very passionate about making art, but she was in an academic master's program. And so she ended up writing about religious art and tying that passion of hers to a more connected subject within the cross-cultural and religious studies department. So there are always ways that you can make those connections. It's just about brainstorming and coming up with enough options. Okay, so someone asked, rephrasing my earlier question, when it's a longer paper, say a 10-page paper, or with many, many different paragraphs, how much or how long should the opening or closing statements be? So good question. Honestly, it should, with longer papers, a good kind of rule of thumb would be like maybe 5 or let's say 4 to 7 sentences. So it still should not be extremely, extremely long, but you have a little bit more room to create a longer paper, or a longer introduction with those, but not by much. So for 10 pages, 4 to 7, but still you have to challenge yourself to stay concise. So you have to communicate your ideas in as few words as possible. So if you're someone who maybe rambles a little bit, so rambling means kind of talking or writing just in lengthy, long, wordy sentences. So if you're someone who tends to ramble, then the editing process is going to be very important for you. So I would recommend, if you write a paragraph and you see, this is kind of long, I think this might be unclear, I would recommend going through sentence by sentence and seeing if there's a way to re-communicate that idea in a more concise way. And if you do that through the editing process, you'll find that eventually your writing will become more clear and concise. It might be hard at first, but it's all about that practicing process. Okay. Any more questions, guys?
Okay, thank you, Sydney. Any more question like about the So if anyone still wants to add some question, we can you can type it down, or you want to ask directly. Maybe there's no question anymore. Maybe a lot of people already understand how you explain, and the explanation is really great. Okay, like Sydney said that planning is really important. Like you take notes about everything you want, so everything is not really confusing or perplexing. And of course, we need to know about our interests, so we don't really confuse about what we want to add in our paper. And it's not make your paper really confusing.
And sorry, Adinda,
Yes.
I wanted to add that it's useful and important to write about your interests, but I would also recommend make sure you don't only write about one thing. Always try and push yourself so that you're learning more and challenging yourself while also making sure you're passionate. So I wanted to clarify because I think it's also important to sometimes be outside your comfort zone and challenge yourself a little bit, but definitely kind of nourish and foster those passions as well. It's a fun balance you have to find. Sorry, continue, Adinda.
Yeah, it's right. It's right. It's like it's a good tips too, so everyone can improve their skill too. So it's not like talking about the same thing again, because it's like when you're done, when you understand how to make your interest and make it, maybe you can move on to the other topic about sports, or maybe about the activism or the politics. Maybe you can improve yourself by reading another article. Oh, there is some question left.
Yes. So sometimes I have no idea how to continue writing, but you still are forced to. So I think this often comes up when people have page or word requirements. So like if you have an assignment where you have to write a 3-page paper and you only have enough for a 2-page paper. That can be really tricky. That's why I think word and page restrictions can be a little bit limiting. But that is also something that you can, there are a couple tricks in how to navigate that. First, make sure that you have an abundance of ideas in the planning stage. So make sure you choose a topic that will allow you to write a decent amount, that will allow you to hit the page or paragraph requirement. And so in that planning stage, brainstorm all of the potential areas you could take that paper. But sometimes, you do that and you're still like, I have another page to go and I have been through every single idea I had for this. So, and that does happen in writing sometimes. I've been there. I'm sure many of you have. So my recommendation is to, when you get to that stage, ask yourself why. I'm going to rephrase that. So make sure you're continually questioning why about your main points. So if you're writing about pollution in Jakarta, for instance, you've established there's pollution, you've established what it does. A way that you can always get more content is to focus on the why. Why is this happening? Why is this important? Why there are certain structures or systems in place the way they are. So if you ever need more content, you're in desperate need, ask yourself why. Start questioning your points and just keep asking yourself questions about your writing. Keep questioning your ideas instead of just struggling to try and brainstorm within, a certain framework that you've established for yourself. Try and push outside that. So question your perspectives, question the points you came up with, and see if there are any avenues you haven't explored. Okay. And that will also make sure that you're not just kind of mindlessly writing, because I know that sometimes happens where you're like, I just need to get 200 more words in. So you just type random things that don't, you basically repeat the same thing you already said 2 paragraphs ago. So don't do that, because that, it makes your writing less clear, it's uninteresting, and it's just not fun for you or the reader. So always try to create more content, more new content through further questions. Yeah, good question. Thank you for asking that.
Is it possible that, like you said, we are keep asking ourselves? Is it possible that simply we are at like what, when, where to deep paper? So it's a simple question, right? Like, is it possible? Like,
yeah, absolutely. Go through who is this, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. Make sure, you've established all of those, contexts within your paper. Make sure you're clearly explaining who you're writing about or who the main people of the story are. For instance, if we're writing about Jakarta, trash in Jakarta, making sure we're establishing who those people are, what the problem is, what people are doing about it, why it matters, how trash is produced in Jakarta. Just going through all those questions to make sure you've covered every aspect that you can.
Okay, thank you so much, Shipmo. So don't forget to keep questioning yourself so you can get a lot of things to your paper. So I think there's no one who wants to ask again. Okay, thank you so much for everyone who already asked, and thank you so much for everyone to participate in our discussion. And yeah, like we know that we got a lot of new knowledge here. It's interesting about how to write an academic essay, such as how to overview of an essay like introduction, body paragraph, and there is a 3 body paragraph, and you can put some argumentation in there, and the conclusion, and then the academic writing style like clarity and getting your meaning across. It's important. Use a specific language. Be careful about these slang words. Avoid using a personal pronouns, and do not repeat words too much. And choose a great topic choice. Find your interest, and still you need to improve yourself in the writing. And yeah, this is the end of our workshop. Thank you so much, Shipney, for your time and for sharing an important things we need to do and we should do now when we do our essay. Well, it was a great explanation. Thank you so much once again.
Yeah, thank you all so much for your attention today and for your engaging questions. I really, really enjoyed this virtual conversation. And also, I do thank you all for your patience. I apologize for the connection problems. I think it's such an interesting, unprecedented time right now that sometimes we're all still figuring out how to navigate it. So thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Sydney. It was a very great explanation. Like, we can see a lot of people want you to be their lecturer because it's a great explanation. Like I've ever heard, like the tips and the trick how to deal with the academic essay.
Oh, thank you so much, Adinda, and thank you for moderating. I think you were so helpful and informative throughout the process, so thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for everyone who are already attend the workshop, to participate in our workshops, and to support our event. Thank you so much, everyone. And next, I would like to thanks to the thank you so much, Catherine Melanie. Thank you so much, Ambrasi.
Thank you all.
Thank you. And yeah, once again, thank you so much to our media partner, webseminar.id, webinaring.id, info.event.indonesia, Seminar Lens, Jaws Media, info_event.indo. And next, I would like to tell you to do not forget to join our next event. There will be 2 events that you need to register yourself because there is an art exhibition. So if you are like to draw something about anything, you can freely register yourself to our event. There will be an exhibition like when you are come to the museum. It's like that. Our website is just like that. It's so wonderful. So please click through the website. I will tell you like bit.ly/exhibition UN 2020. And of course, like you got already the education like from Sydney and from Achmad Munjid yesterday. There is a essay writing competition, and don't forget to register yourself. Don't miss both of our event. And if you are join our essay writing competition, there will be an exciting time. First one is the intolerance that lives in a standardized society. Second one is performative activism and on issues that matter. Third one is the hidden racism of important figures. Four, lack of food security worldwide. And the last one is the effectivity of labor law. It's such an interesting film. It's like no mainstream at all. So don't forget to register yourself. Don't miss the date. And you can easily follow our Instagram at Unsolicited Narrative. So you can get a lot of information there and a lot of fun there because our feed is really interesting. And thank you so much all. Thank you so much, Sydney. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm Adinda for the moderator. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you so much, Aska. Thank you so much, Irma. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope I can see you again in our next event, okay? I'll wait for you guys.
Thank you, Kak.
Thank you.